शुरू करें? Okay, so good morning everyone. Last time in the previous lecture we had discussed about the history of social psychology. Remember? Yes. So now we begin with a new topic, and that is to understand the relationship of social psychology with other disciplines. Because like it was discussed that social psychology tries to understand what is the scientific basis of a human's social behavior. We know that we don't behave in a haphazard way. We know we don't behave in an irrational way. There is a reason for the behavior that we are showing, whether it is pro-social or anti-social. So, that was the scientific basis of understanding human behavior. But social psychology is not isolated. So, what are the other interdisciplinaries with social psychology that we will be understanding today? So, before I proceed with the lecture, I would like all of you to note down some points. Can you please start writing? Please fill your attendance details here. Those who have just joined, please fill your attendance. So, first of all, what is the linkage of social psychology within psychology? That is the first linkage, first relationship. So, within psychology, social psychology is linked with personality psychology, in which we are understanding the personality of a person, traits, types, psychoanalysis, cognitive, behavioral approach. There are so many ways, so many perspectives to understand a person's personality. So, how is social psychology linked with it? For example, there is a situation, maybe a road accident. Now, everyone will not come up and start helping. Everyone is not like that. Some people will just be observers. They will just stand behind in the crowd and see what is going on, what is happening in the scene. But someone will come and help, someone will come forward. So, there is a variation in personality also when there are various social situations. एक ही सिचुएशन में अलग अलग इंसान अलग अलग तरह से बिहेव करते हैं. So, social psychology is this way linked with personality psychology. Next is health psychology. Health psychology. Now, how is social psychology related with health psychology? For example, if you are showing aggression, aggression is your social behavior, but what impact aggression is having on your health? Or suppose if you are not well, you are ill or you are in a terrible pain, what will be your behavior towards other people? Please fill your attendance as soon as you sit. So, what will be your behavior towards other people when you are sick or when you are not well? For example, during COVID, in isolation, in quarantine, what was your social behavior? How you felt for yourself when you are having COVID? So, how your health is affecting your social behavior? That is another interdisciplinary. Next comes industrial and organizational psychology. See, no industry or organization or any setup, any work setup is working in isolation. There are so many people required to run an organization. It is not a one-man show. Someone is a boss, someone is in the top level management. There are 3 levels of management: top level, middle level, lower level. You know this much? Those who have studied commerce in class 12th, if anyone has. But social psychology is trying to understand that be it any organizational setup, even if it is a school, you do not need to always run for corporate setups, whether it is a school, whether this law center or even an MNC, what is the behavior of people towards each other, whether and what is the work culture of that organization, how people can improve it, and if at all there is any malfunctioning in the organization, what could be the reason, what is the reason for employee dissatisfaction in the work setup. All this is also linked with social psychology. Now, these 3 points were linked with psychology, but there is a linkage of social psychology with other non-psychology disciplines. These 3 were linkage of social psychology within psychology. So, next heading is linkage of social psychology with non-psychology disciplines, and these are biology. So, if I say that stress, it affects our interpersonal behavior, our stress levels can affect our interpersonal behavior, but what is going within our body when we are stressed? What about psychoneuroimmunology? How the T cells, B cells, T helper cells, how they are behaving when we are stressed, and certainly when we are stressed there is some abnormality in our behavior even if it is temporarily. So, how we are showing stress at an interpersonal level. Social neuroscience. So, suppose if we are stressed or we are angry, we definitely show this emotion because of change in the hormones or neurotransmitters that is within our body, but how we are showing it at interpersonal level. So, there is a neuroscience, there are neurotransmitters produced, there is a change in the nervous system functioning which is leading to change in our emotions, right, but how is it affecting our interpersonal world, our social world? That is about social neuroscience. Then comes economics, consumer behavior, behavioral economics. They all are linked with social psychology. How do we know, how can we evaluate the status of the demand of a product, whether the product is in high demand or a low demand, what is making, what factors are increasing the demand level of a product, why are consumers only demanding for a one particular product and not the competitor products? You must be knowing about all this, demand and supply. So, that is all about interrelationship of social psychology with economics and studying about other factors of consumer behavior apart from demand or supply. Sociology, how the culture is affecting our social behavior. In sociology, we study about various social trends, cultures. Please fill the attendance sheet as well. So, how culture, norms, tradition, how they affect our social behavior. Caste system, it comes in sociology, culture comes in sociology. So, how it is affecting our social behavior, that is what is studied in interrelationship between social psychology and sociology. Management, once again it is about how the top level management is able to understand the behavior of lower level management in an organization. So, it is once again related to organizational behavior. Advertising and marketing, here also how consumers' attitude can be influenced. For example, if I say that if or what should I say an example, if a student says that pressure cooker saves lot of energy and nutrients of a food and it is good for your family, it is healthy for your family. This thing a student is saying. But if a celebrity says, like Amitabh Bachchan says this, tell me whom will you trust more? The celebrity, right? So that is also about consumer behavior and marketing. Why do you think celebrities come for various advertisements? So that the viewers or the fans, the fan followers, they can be easily influenced. So that also we are studying in how social psychology is affecting the consumer behavior and how we can influence the consumer behavior. Health and public initiatives. There are various drives, polio drive, right? Do boond zindagi ki. That also was done by Amitabh Bachchan, if you remember, right? But why only Amitabh Bachchan? Why not me? Why not you? We have zero influence. We will have zero influence for other people. They will say, who are you? Why should we trust you? Why should we get influence? They will question us. So in public health initiatives, there is an increase in the awareness, such as through advertisements in newspaper, posters, radio, television. So how little bit of information can influence large number of people. That is also about public health initiatives. In COVID, social distancing was encouraged, wearing a mask was encouraged, sanitizer was, use of sanitizer was encouraged. That was all about public health initiative. Then education. In social psychology, how education can be linked. Understanding the behavior of different age group of children. How you all are behaving as mature adults, above 18 or 18 years old adults, is very different from how a primary class child behaves. That child is also studying and so are you. You are at BA level, that is a primary class level. Third standard as compared to BA. Both are students, but their behavior, their conduct, their level of wisdom and how they are behaving in the classroom also is very different. A primary class child will not sit so peacefully without making noise. They will keep moving. They want to have a lot of social behavior even during study time. So that is also studied, that how social psychology, what is the social behavior development of different age groups in the education. Anthropology, how we humans developed, like how our social behavior evolved. If you see about evolutionary psychology as well, the way we are behaving today, we are so much more advanced as compared to other animals. We are no less than animals, but we are social animals. That is why there is a link of social psychology with anthropology. Not every animal has shown such an advanced level of social behavior, that they form groups, they have advanced level of interpersonal relationships, they have a language to convey. We have a language to convey which other animals do not have. So that is also about link of anthropology with social psychology. Then sociolinguistics. Now in sociolinguistics, we are studying about the language development. So language is not developed in one day. If you see a child is cooing, babbling, speaking two-word sentences, then eventually there are phrases and then there is a complete language development. On top of that, this is just a way of learning a language. And if a child is in culture like ours, where there is a lot of bilingualism, multilingualism, at once a child is learning 3-4 languages, some know more than 10 also. But how? That is also about social linguistics. The culture is encouraging that. Some people are speaking in English with the child, some in Hindi. Maybe parents are speaking in English, grandparents in Hindi, caretaker in some other local language like Tamil, Telugu or anything else. So, that is how the culture is influencing the socio-linguistics. Socio is the society around the child and linguistics is the language development. So, I can give you some questions so that you get to know that what questions can be asked from this topic. First is, discuss the relationship of social psychology with psychology. Discuss the relationship of social psychology with psychology. And the next question is, discuss the relationship of social psychology with other disciplines.
If you don't mind, could you repeat?
Yeah. Discuss the relationship of social psychology with other disciplines.
Thank you. First one.
Discuss the relationship of social psychology within psychology.
Okay.
The topics which I taught, the questions are for the same. Please, those who have come recently, fill your attendance details. So, the next topic which we will be understanding is research methods in social psychology. So, what all are the techniques, are the methods which can be used to do research in social psychology? First of all, can anyone tell me the difference between method and methodology?
Methodology is about techniques.
Then what is method?
The method is about something that we can conduct in our theoretical methods, theoretical manners.
I didn't get you. Can you please elaborate on this?
अगर मैं कोई एग्जांपल दूं, जैसे एक क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजिस्ट है, वो अपने लैब के अंदर किसी पे एक्सपेरिमेंट कर रहा है, लेकिन वो टीएटी कर रहा है, थ्योरेटिक एप्रिसिएशन टेस्ट। तो जब वो ये टेस्ट कंडक्ट कर रहा है, तो वो उसे कुछ करना नहीं पड़ रहा है, वो सिर्फ एक क्वेश्चनरीज दे रहा है और फिर उससे आंसर्स ले रहा है। देन उसके बेसिस पे अपना जो भी उसका वो रिपोर्ट है वो तैयार कर रहा है। बट अगर कोई मेजर फॉल्ट होता है किसी के दिमाग के अंदर, अगर वो उसको ट्रीट करना चाहता है, तो फिर उसको वो क्या बोलते हैं, उसको ईसीजी करवाना पड़ेगा, एमआरआई, एफएमआरआई और पता नहीं क्या क्या।
दिमाग में ईसीजी नहीं ईईजी होता है.
सॉरी
ECG is for heart.
सॉरी
Okay, good, well tried, but can anyone refine it further? Who can refine it? The difference between method and methodology. Who can try? There's nothing wrong in trying. Yes? Can you try? The difference between method and methodology. See, method is one way of collecting your data, be it survey, observation, interview, laboratory testing, psychological testing. That is a method. That through which medium are you getting your data of your research? But methodology is the entire process, right from aim, you are making your hypothesis, you are making your research design, that all comprises of methodology. Method is one part of methodology. Methodology is the entire process. You can't just go into the field and start collecting data. You have to make a blueprint. You have to plan well in advance that how you will collect the data. So, all that decision, all that blueprint is a part of your methodology. When you submit synopsis during your PhD, one bit of it is methodology only, that how you plan to do your research. It is after research that comes the thesis. So, since we are covering the topic of research methods in social psychology, that is why I wanted to highlight the difference. So, there are two techniques of doing research in social psychology. Please note them down. First is experimental research and the other is non-experimental research. Experimental and non-experimental research methods are used in social psychology. Now, within these two, there are further categories. So, within experimental method of research, there are various techniques such as laboratory experiments, the scientific study which you do in lab, field experiments in which there is very less control level for the experimenter and you have to go in the actual environment instead of a laboratory made up environment to collect your data. Then comes quasi experiment in which it is neither completely field nor completely laboratory, it is somewhere in between. In experimental method there are 3-4 types. First is laboratory, second is field, third is quasi experiment, QUASI, quasi experiment. So, these are the 3 methods within the experimental method. Then comes non-experimental method. I will be telling you in detail everything, but first note down the flow chart. Just make a flow chart first, so that when you are revising for your exams, there is a clarity. So, in non-experimental methods comes archival research, then case study. Now, see, you are not doing experiments. These are some other methods of data collection in which experiments are not conducted. Like a survey is not an experiment. Observation, interview are not experiments. You are doing a focus group discussion, it is not an experiment. You do not need a lab for it. You do not need a hypothesis all the time. So, in non-experimental come archival research first, second is case study, third is survey, fourth interviews and focus group discussion. First one is archival research. Second is case study, third is survey, fourth is interview and focus group discussion, fifth is observational studies, and the sixth is media and other data. I am repeating for the last time: archival research, case study, survey, interview and focus group discussion, observational studies, and the sixth part is media and other data source. Now, one major difference between experimental method and non-experimental method is about the variables. In an experiment, there will always be a variable, independent variable and dependent variable. So, for example, if I want to see that how temperature is affecting our mood, our emotion. Temperature can be the independent variable which can be controlled in the lab. Lab can be made very hot or very cold, and the mood or the emotion will be affected by the temperature, which is a dependent variable. So, the dependent variable is affected by the independent variable, but the independent variable can be manipulated by the researcher or the experimenter. And before we conduct experiments, we should always make a hypothesis. A hypothesis is framed, which is a tentative statement, you all know by now. A tentative statement, we are assuming something which can be proved to be false as well as true. If it is proved to be true, hypothesis is retained. If false, it is rejected. But if it is rejected, it does not mean your research goes in vain, because it is still proving something. So, usually in social psychology, dependent variable is usually the behavior. Like I just said, temperature and mood. The mood was a behavior which got influenced by the temperature. So, in social psychology, the behavior is usually considered the dependent variable. Now, what needs to be the independent variable? That depends upon the experimenter. Now, what are some limitations of this method? First of all, whatever experiment is proving, it is not necessary same is applicable in the field, in the natural setup. Outside it is very cold, inside the lab you have made it very heated up, very cozy, but the moment you are outside, again there is a change. So, the way the level of controllability in lab or in the laboratory experiment, that controllability is very high. Everything can be controlled by the experimenter, it can be manipulated by the experimenter anytime, but that is not possible in the natural environment. So, that is one of the major demerits. How a demerit? Fine, you are understanding the human behavior, but ultimately it is not a natural environment. Human behavior will be something else in the natural environment. So, it is understood on a scientific basis, but the controllability is very high. That is one of the demerits. And another demerit is the way people behave in the experiment, in the laboratory setup, that is not their natural behavior. Outside in their everyday life, in the real world, their behavior will be something else. In the lab, their behavior which is going to be quite made up. Then comes the field experiment. Now, see, in laboratory experiment, lot of variables were manipulated, which were the independent variables. But in field experiment, the scope of manipulating the independent variables is not very high, which like it is in the laboratory, because you can't control everything all the time. You are in the field, you are in the natural environment, everything cannot go as per your plans. So, the level of controllability in the field experiment by the experimenter is very less. Then comes quasi experiment. Now, quasi, like I said, it is somewhere in between the laboratory and the field experiment. How? In laboratory, there is 100% controllability, right? You can, as an experimenter, do whatever you want. You can decide anything, which is not at all in the field. You can't run after people in the field to come and become your participants. You can't control their environment. Suppose if you are going to someone's home just to collect data through an experiment, you can't control what they are doing at their home. They will say, we are at our home, you have come to our place. So, you are no one to control us like this. But quasi is somewhere in between now. How? So, in quasi experiments, you are approaching some naturally occurring groups. For example, the ethnic groups or the religious groups. Or suppose if you want to conduct some experiments only on girls or only on boys, you are going to a pure girls school or you are going to a pure boys school. So, you have already shortlisted some people and you are already going to that, you are already approaching those people. So, going to a pure girls school has already filtered out the boys if you have to conduct some experiment on girls, on their behavior. So, that is about quasi. There is some level of controllability, but still not as much as it is in the laboratory experiment. So, in case of quasi experiments, researchers employ already existing groups to examine the pattern of relationships between variables. So, suppose if, like I said, you are going to a pure boys or a pure girls school to an already filtered population. Now, within that, what is your research study? You can smoothly implement that. So, these were the three types of experimental research: field, laboratory and quasi. Now comes non-experimental research. So, first is archival research. Archival is related to whatever historical phenomena which has already occurred. So, how you can acquire that data? It is not something new. You can't produce that data once again. It has already been existing since a long time. You just need to reuse that data. So, if I say any terrorist attack which has already happened earlier, now you are studying about the after effects of the terrorist attack in the people, in the behavior of the people. So, now you can't make that attack occur again. You will just pick up the data and reuse it for your research. So, you are reconstructing your data, you are reconstructing your research around the data. You cannot change the data, you cannot manipulate with it, you can only reuse it in a different way, with a different theme, with a different topic. But one of the major demerits in archival research, you may not find the records all the time. They may be damaged. You go to a library and there are books which are 2 decades, 3 decades old. Now, it is very difficult to acquire data from a damaged book. You want the data, but that data is so old that you can't bring it to existence once again. So, this is a chance of a demerit in archival research. And another thing is, since the data, if it is already very old, you can't reproduce it, it can hinder with the reliability also of the research. Why? Researcher wants to collect the old data, availability is very less, almost nil, and new data cannot be produced. So, certainly if there is any scope of manipulation, it is hindering with the reliability. The reliability, the quality, they get hampered. Then next non-experimental method is case study. Case study is very easy, I am sure, for all of you. You have done it umpteen number of times, in which you are studying any person, any institution at any level. You are picking up a person or institution or organization and doing an in-depth study. In-depth means you are studying, you are understanding that topic for a long period of time. So, case study is also considered as a longitudinal study and not a cross-sectional study. Cross sectional is where you are studying so many issues at the same time. Like you are studying one issue, second issue, third issue at the same time parallel. But longitudinal is you are picking up one issue and studying it over a period of maybe 10 years, 15 years, seeing the change. So, that is a case study. But one of the demerits of case study is the information might change. If you are studying, if I say you are studying a child's social behavior. Now, when the person was a child, maybe toddler, 4-5 years old, the social behavior was very different as compared to when that person became an adolescent. With time, the person will grow, but your case is that same person. So, that data might keep changing. But one of the merits of case study is whatever you can't get from laboratory setup, you can get from case study. Why? Because laboratory setup is only for few hours, few minutes, but case study there is no particular time limit. You can study the person, the topic for as long as you want. Then comes survey. Now, you all know in survey we are using survey through an interview also. We can ask questions by in verbatim, and in survey there are close ended and open ended questions. I hope you know what are close and open ended questions. Who can recap it?
ओपन एंड जिसमें क्वेश्चन का आंसर को डिस्क्राइब किया जाता है, और जो क्लोज एंडेड है उसमें लाइक यस नो और मेबी.
Yes. So, in close ended questions we limit the answers only to some options, and it is up to the researcher what options he wants to give when the survey questionnaire is being drafted. But in open ended questions there is no word limit, there are no specific options to be chosen. So, whatever the participant wants he or she can answer. So, that is the difference between closed and open ended questions which can be used in survey. So, in the survey the process is of noting the responses. So, either the person speaks and you note down the responses on his or her behalf, which is verbatim, or you can give the list of questions to the participant and he or she can fill the details and return it to you. But the thing is, it is very labor intense. So, you need a lot of volunteers to help you collect the data in less time duration, and first of all it is very labor intense. Second thing is it is very difficult for the confidentiality to be maintained, because whatever the participant is writing you can't guarantee that who is reading, who is not. So, you have to be very careful when you have to maintain the confidentiality of the responses. So, when we are collecting responses through survey, we have to be very careful about who is the target population, rural or urban, male or female, young or old, educated or illiterate. There are various categories of a population. So, you need to be very careful about categorizing the people, and we have to avoid all the biased questions. So, biased questions like how great is your customer service. So, you are already judging that it is great, right. In your question you have already given an answer, you have already judged that yes, how it is great, but how great is it? Certainly it looks quite meaningless. So, how would you rate your customer service? That is little bit more refined and better. And certainly while we are constructing the survey questionnaire, we have to be very careful that total how many questions should be there. The questionnaire should neither be very lengthy, which is comprising of 100 questions, 200 questions, nor it should be so short like just 1 or 2 questions. It should be somewhere in between like 20 to 30 questions. And in that, how many should be close ended, how many should be open ended, so that there is a mixture of quantitative analysis as well as qualitative analysis. Usually in close ended there is a quantitative analysis, and in open ended there is a qualitative or thematic analysis. Have you understood about all this in research methods? You have, right? So these are not jargons to you. One more thing, be very careful in survey, do not use jargons. And if you are using a jargon, you should first explain the meaning of the term to the person or the participant who will be attempting the questions. Because like if I say, if I talk about cognition, as psychology students, you will know what cognition is, but it is not necessary that a non-psychology person or a lay person should know what is cognition. Not necessary. If they know, fine. If they do not know, it is your responsibility to explain it beforehand. There are other issues also related to survey, such as question order. Which question should come when? So it should not be haphazard. It should not be like demographic details are coming at the end. First you are starting with some other question. So you have to see that you have to subdivide the questionnaire at times, considering the theme. If you are asking, okay, how much will you rate thumbs up? Then you are asking, do you drink thumbs up? So it is better you first ask, do you drink thumbs up? And then you ask the person to rate it. So you have to see the serial order of the questions in the questionnaire, so that it looks very sensible. Otherwise the participant will also get confused. Then comes interviews and focus group discussions. So what is the difference between an interview and a focus group discussion? Can anyone tell me? Right. So basically in an interview there are just two people, an interviewer and an interviewee. The person who is asking questions is the interviewer, and the person who is answering to the questions is the interviewee. But in focus group discussion or FGD, there could be a small group like 4 to 8 people or even up to 20, and there is one person who is a facilitator. Now what is a facilitator's job? Can anyone tell me? Sorry? Okay. So a facilitator's job is, first of all, to initiate the focus group discussion. People can't just come together and start talking away to glory and end up having conflicts and they just adjourn. The facilitator's work is that the direction of conversation should adhere to the theme. Second thing, there shouldn't be any conflict. Third, everyone should get an equal opportunity to speak. It should not be that one is speaking a lot, he is just yapping away, and the other person is not getting a chance to speak at all. So these points a facilitator needs to consider, and other methods we will do in the next lecture.